Oh, hello, yes. Well, good grief, suddenly autumnal, isn't it? Gets to that kind of very late August thing where you suddenly notice that the change, as perhaps certain women of a certain age might say, yes, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, as Shelley, well, didn't sing because he was in the Buzzcocks, but the other one, the one they made you read at school. Not much fun, is it, after the odes? Anyway, leaving that aside, but we might come back to that as a notion. I had to smile at this with Isabel Oakeshott yesterday. Isabel Oakeshott, who I'm convinced is effectively the most walking metaphor for the what's appalling in British politics and media that has ever existed. Anyway, this is Knightsbridge right now, she's posting. It's not right now, it's probably earlier. But anyway, some kind of all-male protest about Sudan, all in Arabic. Import the third world, import their conflicts. What have we done? Well, in your case, Isabel, nothing other than being just a bit of a bigot, really, isn't it? Because, you've rung that in from the UAE, which is a different country entirely, which you sit in, and can't be bothered to learn their language. So you're posting this up in English from a completely different country, and you're kind of slagging off people that have gone to a different country and don't abide by the rules. Never mind that, eh? I think it's a working definition of white privilege. Still, she's bound to be white because, she is. Right. Both that. You know what I mean. Anyway, yes. If Isabel had done the whole I'm a journalist bit, then she could have looked this up, because I did. And actually, this is the Sudanese Knightsbridge branch of the Isabel Oakeshott Appreciation Society. She could find that out, couldn't she? But Isabel, I think, like an awful lot of adults in the country, have reached that point in their lives, post-18, where they just assume that there is nothing else realistically that it's worthwhile their time finding out. Yeah. After sort of 25 years working in education, I've noticed it with an awful lot of the parents. I used to think it was a particularly SEN parent thing because that's where I primarily work. But actually, I just think it's generically across adults that a lot of people reach the age of 18 and assume that there is nothing else that needs to be done in terms of finding anything out or indeed working on themselves in the slightest. And you will notice a lot of this kind of stuff in social media, that people will lecture you on things that they have no idea about. I mean, I'm fully aware of what I don't know. There are huge gaps in my basic understanding of the world, right? I'm fully prepared to accept that because, I'm a cognizant adult. I don't assume that I know everything and therefore brush off anything that becomes problematic my way. People often do that. They simply become abusive. There's a lot of that on Twitter. But, I'm very used to people coming into my Twitter feed or on here and telling me that after 25 years of working in schools, I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is fine. You can do that, but I don't think it's a good look, really, is it? What it suggests strongly is that basically you did go to school, but you didn't actually learn anything. And by that I don't mean about 1066 and all that, but I mean thinking about thinking, if you like. It's that Bloom's taxonomy thing. You got to level 1 whereby you know that there's 1066 and you have a vague idea of what happened, but you can't tell me anything else about it, and you've never bothered to move on, and you don't see why you should, because, drum roll, you're an adult. You just know everything, and that's all there is to it. It's not just a particularly bloke thing, but it is a very blokey thing. Anyway, that's a roundabout way of me saying about the current crisis, in inverted commas, in British education, which isn't a crisis at all, but it strikes me that we might well be having a direction of travel in terms of our glorious right-wingers and what they're after, because we had Bridget Phillipson, who has decided to, for some bizarre reason, like Labour Party ministers do when they're in power, write for the Daily Telegraph. I don't know why they do. Anyway, she's suggesting that parents do more to bring their kids into school. Okay then, fine. Not anything particularly groundbreaking about that. The Telegraph decided to run a kind of spoiler piece the day before about why white working class children fail the race dividing English schools, which might well be worthwhile if you fancy reading, because it manages to, not talk about race in a great deal of ways, but actually suggest, drumroll, that there might be something else going on, which we'll come on to in a minute. And they then published another piece which was very, very similar about America. thinker. And again, I would encourage you to read it because it's about things that aren't necessarily to do with woke teachers simply making everybody trans. Yes, because oddly the world isn't quite as simplistic as that. No, we require the dinner ladies to do it as well. Yes, or dinner staff, I should say, I suppose, but they usually are ladies. Let's face it. Anyway, yes. So there you have it, you see. We need to get more kids into school so they can become better qualified. But you will notice that this has an inherent trap. There is a bear trap at the base of this, yeah? In the sense that with the GCSE results coming out, they were very poor this year. Very, very poor because the kids' maths and English were poor. Very poor this year, yes. So we need to do something about that and bring their maths and English scores up. But 15 years ago, the problem was that too many kids were doing well in maths and English, which just showed that they weren't hard enough. We need to make it harder so more kids fail. Yes, can't win. But the latest one, of course, because it's a racially charged issue, is the fact that white working class kids are doing worse than other groups in society. There must be a major problem to that. Must be the teacher's fault. And as I keep pointing out here, well, actually, it's because, white working class kids have consistently failed in education for the last 80 years. Plus, more, whatever. You can go back to the year dot, metaphorically, which is about 1855 in terms of British education, and white working class kids don't do as well as non-white working class kids. We didn't really tend to measure kids that weren't necessarily white in those days, but basically the whole sociology of education tells you that schools are run by middle-class professionals and they tend to like kids that fit in with middle-class professionals. In other words, children like their own. That's the way that one works, okay? That's simply the way that one works, and you can angst about it as much as you like. But the fundamental point for me about this is, well, what are we training kids to do exactly? Because it's fine talking about GCSEs and A-levels and degrees, but if we have a stagnant, moribund economy which isn't going to pay anybody anything like their worth for the education that they get, what is the point of people doing it? Now, others from abroad might well have a culture where they see education as a way of progressing. That's fine, okay. But there is a particular reason, I think, why the white working class in Britain haven't bought into that, and that's because of, after years, and we have now basically 2 generations of people that now are living in this country in a very post-industrial landscape where there is nothing for them. You don't need a high standard of education to work a till in Tesco. Okay, it helps if you can read, which basically everybody can. We have effectively as close to 100% literacy as we can do. It helps if everyone is basically numerate, which, let's face it, for any average job requires the same skills as someone who's about 8. So it's not hard to do. That isn't the issue. The issue is there is no point realistically in striving and indeed getting yourself, in terms of university, etc., into debt when there isn't a suitable job for that. What is the point of having a degree and coming out with 60Ks in debt when A, you can't get a job anything like to pay off your student loan, or indeed at any appropriate level? Because we've overproduced. But the answer, it appears, according to our commentariat and our glorious education minister, and indeed the majority of people replying to those 2 articles in the Daily Telegraph, is just to get more kids through, get more kids with more education. Oh, okay, great. But I want kids to be equipped for the world as it is. I want kids to do different from what their parents did. I don't want kids to simply have these qualifications which effectively mean nothing, yeah? All of those people that say that GCSEs are too easy, well, okay, I challenge any of them to sit English or Maths GCSE. I can almost guarantee you that they will fail, hands down. They will especially fail Science GCSE, yeah? Yeah, the combined science paper. Guaranteed, yeah? Not that, they're stupid necessarily, but all of that knowledge is something that is not required in life. What is required in life is the ability to look analytically at a problem. And to do that, you need to have those wider skills. It's the type of thing that I do teaching the humanities, is to think about why things happen and how you might sort of tackle that on a broader level. And people like Isabel, just to come back to her, will never ever do that, because for her there can only be one simple solution to things, which is just whatever is politically expedient for her particular class at the time. And what's politically expedient for that this time is that poor white working class kids are being done over by people like me, and it needs to be sorted out. But at the same time, you will notice that there are all these lazy working class people as well. You know, the ones on benefits, and what they need is to be punished a bit to make them go into work, because we have to have that reserve army of labour, don't we? That's vitally important. And that realistically is the way that this will go. The conversation will shift at a moment's notice. The moment that somebody finally does something, if you like, in let's say a few years' time about immigration, let's say the fantasy land of deporting 600,000 people from the country, okay, then suddenly there will be an enormous labour shortage, in which case no one in Isabel Oakeshot's earshot will say anything about the idea of wages going up. No. It'll be up to the indolent, useless white working class to just work harder for less. That's exactly where this thing is going. And I'd like those people to be better equipped for understanding exactly whereabouts they fit in the pile. I think that might well be very useful in their lives, because you do meet a lot of people, I'm sure you know, online, who earnestly believe that although that nice Mr. Farage probably wasn't telling enormously truthful things about Brexit last time, that very big issue which has actually impoverished them, that this time round he undoubtedly will. Yes, I'd like people to question things a lot better, and yes, that does make me a very dangerous lefty, but it makes me at the same time somebody who's an actual adult compared to, people like Isabel, I think. Anyway, bit of a rambling rant. Do have a glorious Monday if you can. I've discovered today that because of some of my students who are theoretically in placements have inset days that I don't actually teach at all. Hooray! I'll do things, I suppose. Better take the cat back to the vet, hadn't I? My life. Enjoy.